Leo's role is to take all of those policies and procedures and those best practices, systematize them. They get built into Leo such that every day you log into our app, desktop or mobile app, and Leo's giving you guidance.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
Going great. Everything's going well over here. How about you, Raphael? How's it going?
Doing great. Cannot complain. The weather's obviously a little bit murky here in Louisville, Kentucky, but in other parts of the country, not so much. But the good thing about it is we have a phenomenal conversation we're going to have today with our guest, Daniel Cunningham. Welcome to the show. We're excited to learn a little bit more about your backstory and what you do on a day-to-day. So,
hey guys, thank you for having me. Really proud, really happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. No. So one of the things that I'm kind of curious about, what we typically like to do when we first get started is we like to learn about the person that's across the table from us. So if you don't mind kind of sharing your backstory, I think that'd be great.
Sure. It's a very long and winding road to where I am today. That's for sure. Starts with, I'm actually a civil engineer by education and started out in the world doing heavy industrial construction. And then I left that career to start my first company, which we had this crazy idea in the 90s, in the early 90s, that people were going to buy music over the internet. So started a company that was intended to sell downloadable music over the internet. This was before there was an iPod. This was barely before there were even MP3s. So we were a little early on that idea. And then so moved from that to starting into, I worked for Aimco, which was the largest multifamily REIT in the country at the time, and moved into an asset management role with Aimco, which is really the kind of beginning of the journey today, which is understanding the multifamily market. Aimco had at that time, I think, about 100,000 units across the country, multifamily units, a lot of them affordable housing, which is a really difficult part of the industry. So then jumped to Aimco. Then left Aimco to found another company called Living Homes, which designs and builds prefab modern green homes. Living Homes is now called Plant Prefab today. They were one of the very first funds that the Alexa Fund invested in. So they're still growing strong. We started that company just before the housing crash in 2008. Oh. So I had to jettison out of the startup environment, get a real job, and then I worked for a developer here in Los Angeles who owned and managed commercial real estate and multifamily hospitality, a company called the Core Group. And in that capacity, I started a property management company for them, which is where I started to marry the two ideas of problems that I had seen at Aimco, which was how do you create consistency and accountability across a large portfolio, with now the in the trenches experience that I had starting a property management company for the Core Group. And getting to experience where that disconnect was. Why is it challenging to get consistent accountability? And the answer is because the industry is so very dependent on the local knowledge and experience of whoever's managing that property. And so the light bulb that went off there was, maybe we can shift the burden from expecting these folks on site to know it all and remember it all. I mean, they're expected to be experts across, preventative maintenance and risk management and marketing and leasing. And sometimes they're part-time attorneys. Sometimes they're part-time psychologists dealing with resident issues. So how do you relieve that burden of expecting those folks to have all of that institutional knowledge? And you do that through technology where our company we founded, Leo, is actually the expert in operations and gives daily guidance to the local operators. And then you just ask them to execute. And then you give real-time visibility to those things that are happening or not happening to the investors or the senior executives in that company. So that was sort of the journey of the birth of Leonardo247, where we are today.
That's awesome. No, and it is a very windy road up until where you are today. I mean, that's kind of indicative of a lot of people we interview in the podcast. As a fellow engineer, we kind of talked about it offline. I started off in the industrial engineering is what I studied, and then I got into the software development space, did that for about 5 years, and then jumped into the commercial real estate brokerage side. And again, it's indicative of a lot of people we interview. It is an industry where you don't necessarily always start out in the industry. It's something that just kind of you find your way into it. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think multifamily, especially. I mean, commercial brokerage is a very attractive, lucrative industry for a lot of people, right? And but nobody thinks of that. So there are some people who purposely get into commercial real estate. Nobody thinks that multifamily is on the operations side is going to be a lucrative career. It is one that, as you said, people fall into. They love it. They are vastly underpaid and vastly underappreciated for the difficulty that it takes to operate a multifamily building. And so people that stay in the business do so because they have a real, I think, love of the personal interactions that it affords. But I don't know that it's ever been a career choice for anybody out of school.
That kind of brings me up to a question, actually. It's two-part, actually. What actually drew you to commercial real estate in general? And then why multifamily? Like, why that sector of, the vast commercial industry?
So, Aimco was really my first foray into multifamily real estate and commercial. It was a combination of both, but it was mostly multifamily. And that was really, I should not have had that job. I should not have gotten that job. I was not qualified to step in and take over as an asset management for Aimco, but I had a teensy weensy bit of experience running what was essentially like a Regis type setup. I worked for a developer who was building a small little homespun Regis building in Santa Monica, California. And they wanted somebody to finish the construction. So I had the construction background. And then they needed somebody to actually operate it. So once it was done, I said, well, I don't know anything about the operations piece, but I can get it built for you and get it up and running. So I stepped in as a project manager to get that building finished. And then okay, well, figure out how you lease these units. And there were both residential and commercial units there, and figure out how we manage that. What accounting platform? Like, they knew nothing about it. Neither did I. So I really got thrown into that because I just happened to be there to help on the construction side. And I leveraged that teensy weensy experience into saying, hey, look, I could step into a larger role at a company like Aimco and learn the business better, be helpful there. And I was fortunate enough that somebody over there took a flyer on me, and it really clicked with me. I quickly became, from an asset manager, rose direct to their director of asset management, and then rolled over into their fund management group, where I was now, all the asset managers were submitting their financial reports to me, and I was asking questions about inefficiencies and why are we under market here, under market there in terms of rent, why are we having big capital expenses, were we not doing the right kind of maintenance? So it was an incredible broad experience for me that really opened the doors to the challenges of managing mostly multifamily real estate. So that was really the introduction, and then Leonardo followed naturally from that. It was where my expertise was. It's where I keenly understood the inefficiencies, the problems, the headwinds in the market. And then, when the core group brought me on to manage their assets and then start the property management company, which again was unexpected, right? I was still at the asset management level. Brad Corzin, who's a very smart guy, great developer, was smart enough to see that the market was going to take a downturn, that we would be better if we were closer to the assets. So rather than have an asset management team, I should actually start the property management company. And that's when I got really my hands dirty, and all of these opportunities to improve the business and how it operates afforded themselves.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
if you, I'd love to hear, exactly what, Leo does, like as a company, what you guys are focused on, what are the offerings that you provide to the marketplace? And then maybe we'll dive into a little bit about your experience in that front and maybe some of the struggles that inherently come with the process of managing a portfolio. So
Yeah, it was difficult for us in the early days to really convey what Leo was doing, because there wasn't really an analog for our goals. This idea of systematizing and automating the operational piece was very new to the industry. There were plenty of property management systems, PMS platforms already in place. Yardi, RealPage, MRI, some names that folks would probably recognize. But there were accounting platforms that grew based on the knowledge that they had of the resident, because they were accounting for the rents. They needed to understand what the leases were, and then they needed to understand what their vacancy was going to look like, so they could market to residents. And then there were other, like, residents want to issue work orders. How can they accept work orders? So they were building upon the resident experience. And in the meantime, the on the ground operations piece at the site level was really being completely ignored. People were literally crossing their fingers and hoping these people were doing what they were supposed to be doing. They invented this whole middle level of management, these regional property managers. If you encounter any multifamily company with a decent sized portfolio, 3,000 units and up, you will find and maybe many regional property managers. And their role largely is to make sure that people on site are doing what they're supposed to be doing, because it's very difficult to herd those cats. And they would did create a giant binder of policies and procedures. And I remember on a monthly basis printing out new policies and procedures and sending them out to the field saying, replace page 72 with this page 72 and add page 73. And then we'd go out on site and find out nobody's paying attention to it. The binder was sitting on the shelf gathering dust. People were just doing whatever came naturally to them, what they'd done before, what they guessed they should be doing. They were not following procedures. So then you try to train them. Like, okay, we're going to launch this massive training effort, and we'll hire directors of training and marketing. They're going to fix all this. Well, you can do that, but the business has a 50% plus turnover rate. So you can get everybody trained, and in 18 months, the majority of them are out the door. And so that's a Sisyphusian task. Like, you just cannot stop. You cannot catch up. So that's the dynamic that we were stepping into. Leo's role, initially we called it performance management software. Now we're broadly calling it operations and maintenance software. Leo's role is to take all of those policies and procedures and those best practices, systematize them. They get built into Leo such that every day you log into our app, desktop or mobile app, and Leo's giving you guidance. Okay, this is the week you need to do a risk management inspection, and here's the inspection form you need to use. Or you need to do this training, and here's a video that you need to watch or you need to present to people to take the training. Or here is a workflow you need to follow. Or hey, you've just had a water intrusion event. Click this button, and we will give you the steps you need to take in order to prevent mold, keep the people that are living there safe and healthy. Make sure you get an all clear test before you move them back in. Like, what are those steps you need to follow? And so there's a proactive piece, daily, weekly, monthly things need to be done. There's a reactive piece, which is, hey, something's happened. Here's the workflow, launch this workflow and address it in the proper way. And then all of that data is captured in our document management system so that you can report on it, look at your trends and say, across the portfolio, we have a dashboard that says red, yellow, green, who's in compliance. So who's missed a fire inspection, or who has not yet performed their annual maintenance on the backflow preventer. So we provide real-time visibility into all these things that should be happening at the local site, while empowering the people at the site level with the right form or the function or process that they need to be successful. So that's really it. We want everything that happens at the site level to flow through Leo. We also, as in the course of doing some of these things, like if we send you on a work order inspection, a work order not work order, excuse me. If we send you out on a risk management inspection, you may find that there's bubbling or pooling of water at the roof. So you want to create a work order from that. You can also create work orders in Leo. We have a bisynchronous integration with all the PMS platforms, so we can pass that back into the PMS platform. They remain the system of record with respect to the work orders and that sort of thing. So we can capture all of that. But it allows everybody to do everything in Leo. So even the work orders that were traditionally done in PMS platforms, those can be brought in Leo. So they have one place to go for both the Leo side and the work order side, which together is everything that needs to happen at the site level.
Awesome. And I'm assuming that was an iterative development of the system to make sure that, you were incorporating all the proper processes that you needed within that. And did it stem, I guess, did the company itself stem from the fact that, you wanted to design something that could support your property management business, or was this a completely unrelated, venture?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I don't talk about that too much. But I actually wrote a book. I wrote a book when I was working for the core group that I said, okay, the book's called 365 Days of Property Management. And so I'm going to write this book. The book was an expression of the revelation that multifamily management needed a better process in order to have consistent results and accountability. And what I initially termed that was the nested action cycle. So the things you have to do every day, nested within the things you have to do once a week, nested within the things you do annually or quarterly, that sort of thing. And so I wrote a book, and I'm like, the world will be the path to my door as a property manager. And I bought the management company from Core, and I said, I'm going to publish this book. People are going to flow to my property management company because I've developed this superior way of managing. And what I quickly learned was that the book was not that much better than the binder, right? It could still easily sit on the shelf. And the better idea was not sell the book, was to actually turn the book into a piece of software. And the initial, I built the initial, we'll call it an alpha product, with some guys in India that I would talk to 2 a.m, right? And all that got tested on the management company. So my management company, that was Core's management company that I bought from them, we were eating our own dog food there. So we were testing it out, seeing what would work. So we definitely the alpha product got refined on my own management company. And once we were like, yeah, this works. This is a better way to do things. This is way easier, even given the clunky version of what we built at that time, which was very chitty bang bang compared to today. Then once that was clear, then we're like, okay, this is going to be a software company. So then what was the management company, then we split off and became Leonardo247 as a software company. So the early days was definitely using our own services as a proving ground for this technology.
That's awesome. No,
yeah.
And that's literally how, I come from the software side as well. Was in the software space for about 5 years before. And that's how we test it a lot of times. It's like you throw it out to the users and say, okay, try to break this thing. Obviously you gather requirements and you have those conversations, and that's the 2 a.m. discussions you guys had with the developers. And then it's like, go back, design something, throw it out there, iterate through it, try to improve it over time. And then ultimately you have a product that, is serving, a niche that is very highly sought after. As far as the software product itself, is it more of a licensed product, or is it one of those things that you team up with property owners and then you kind of handle the property management and utilize the system to, administer the management?
Yeah, so it's a platform that you license on a site license basis. So unlimited users, generally all the functionality comes with the package. So use as much as you want or as little of it as you want. And the market price works out to be somewhere around $10 a unit a year is the price for Leo. So, I think it's a fairly affordable piece of software. We're deployed across about 2 million units across the country. About 55,000 buildings are using the software. And we started in 2011, and we were completely bootstrapped in the early days. We took a high net worth investor came on board in 2016. So we were 5 years of testing it with our own stuff, and until we think we had it right. And then in 2016 is really when we kind of launched the look and feel of the platform that you see today. And then we're still bootstrapped. Had a client who came back to us and like, we really love this. Can we invest? So we took some money from a client at one point, and then a private equity firm, Level Equity out of New York, in 2019 came to us, and then we in 2020 we closed our first like institutional capital with Level Equity. They've been a great partner for us, and it's a minority investment. So, we've still had the purview to operate the business as we see fit, and the company's been doing very well, especially the last few years. I think there's something about, for us, if there's a silver lining with the pandemic, it is that the idea of sort of remotely monitoring what's happening at the property level has really come into its own. And that's exactly what Leo was built for, like be able to see that things are happening without having to send those RPMs, those regional property managers, out to the site every week, whatever, to ask, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Leo monitors all that minutia, and now they can focus on higher level, how's marketing looking? How are we raising rents? How's our occupancy? They can focus on things that make the company money. We can let them know if they've got a problem, and we will grow probably over 40, nearly 50% this year.
That's huge. That's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's amazing.
Yeah. 10-year overnight success.
10 years.
Yeah. Well, that's how it normally is, right? It takes about 10 years for you to make the success, and people see that success and think it's a year-long process. But you kind of dabbled a little bit about the pandemic and kind of how it changed your company and such. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, and like maybe did it change some of the processes that you guys go through since COVID has happened and the pandemic, or has your business took a turn in one direction? Or
so first of all, from at a high level, the company, Leo had always been a virtual company. We hired the best people we possibly could wherever we could find them, and wherever we could afford them. And living in Los Angeles, this wasn't always the best recruitment pool for early stage startup. So the pandemic did not really affect us at a corporate level about how we operate. How it affected our clients is we saw Leo used in some ways we didn't expect, which was interesting. I mean, Leo is a very flexible tool. All these inspections and things I'm talking to you about, they're all pretty much defined by our clients. We have a library of best practices that you can step into. If you if you know nothing about operating an apartment building, you can step into the Leo library and get everything you need to be successful. But typically, the implementation process starts with understanding what their existing policies and procedures are, and building those into Leo for them, and then they can modify them as they wish from there. But a few new things were implemented within Leo we didn't expect. For example, tracking PPE, and trying to keep abreast of what their stock was of certain kinds of things that they want to do to keep the people on site safe. Tracking, some folks were tracking their vaccination records with the staff, tracking instances of illness. They would launch a workflow every day within Leo where everybody would check in, say how they were feeling, what their temperatures were. They would advanced cleaning protocols were implemented. So we saw a bunch of workflows and inspections where they're very focused on a documenting what they had done to clean the entire building and the grounds. Like that became a real key. So there were things like that were implemented as a result of the pandemic. But Leo's core value proposition didn't change at all, which is which is how can you systematize and automate, get consistency across a portfolio. And it just opened up, the pandemic just opened up different avenues where that became important. Another example, through the pandemic, as you guys might know, being the CRE Academy, there were a lot of restrictions implemented on evictions, right? And concurrently, also a lot of rent relief type programs that were put into place where the landlords could take advantage of getting paid by the government. All of those things imposed additional restrictions and process upon landlords when it came time to evict people who ultimately didn't pay. At a time when landlords right now, multifamily landlords at least, are really being, I think, vilified for being, for evicting people. And so you needed to be very careful that you weren't unnecessarily or improperly or prejudiciously evicting people, because it would make the headlines. So Leonardo is now really running the eviction process for a number of our clients in a very prescriptive way, where everybody has to make sure that they've documented that they're in compliance with whatever the local laws are. Leo has what we call an automated approval process that then sends that out to lawyers. Their lawyers look at it. They're like, yes, we agree. This one is appropriate for eviction. Then it goes to a senior person who has to agree. And then, so that whole workflow, that process didn't really exist within Leo before. But in order to navigate these kinds of restrictions on a consistent basis by people who may not really understand what those laws are or what it requires them to do, is a perfect use case for Leo. And we didn't expect that. So that's come out of all of this as well.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. And also, I'm assuming, and you can explain the way that new functionality comes available on Leo. I'm assuming the way you currently handle it is, do you have like a dedicated individual or team that speaks with clients to determine what their needs are, and then you develop the software to essentially have new functionality based on whatever the request is? So in the case of the eviction, I'm assuming that you probably had enough clients say, hey, we want this functionality, to where you ultimately dedicate a resource to execute, correct?
Yes. So, yeah. So two things. What you just said is true, which is that we had the framework for what they needed to do through the eviction process, but it wasn't complete. So because we heard a number of clients say we need this, we reacted to that and developed something, fast-tracked something that met their needs. And I think about 3 months we had a new kind of feature set released to do that. And then to your other point, one of the things that I think defines Leo and really sets us apart is our account management team. Rather than a piece of technology that you adopt and you deploy and we're like, yay, thank you, good luck, let us know how it goes. Leo really acts as a partner to our clients. And partly that's to benefit them, and partly that's self-preservation, and I'll explain. So for our clients, we have some of the largest operators in the country. We have small operators too. We have a very broad client base, but what it means is we get to see kind of the best practices that work for everybody. And all that stuff is proprietary, and we don't, share any of that. But we learn from that. Like we look, hey, snow removal logs are really important in the Northeast, right? Leo should have a standard snow removal log of its own. And so we feel empowered by our relationships with our clients to bring to them ideas to make their business better. And one of our core values is to support with intention, which is to understand what their needs are. And sometimes the clients don't necessarily know the best way to solve that need, or worse yet, they have a wrong idea about how to solve that need. And our account management team is there to say, I think there's a better way. I think consider this. You're not doing this, or you're doing it, but you're not doing it in a way that's consistent with what top shelf operators are doing. So consider doing it differently in Leo in this manner. And that dialogue happens on a regular basis. So a part of our mission is to be a partner and make our clients better operators, because we sit in this unique position. And the other thing is, from a self-preservation standpoint, change is hard for anybody, especially I think this business, which has a long time history of trudging slowly through the mire of technology. They're not on the early end of the adoption curve. So getting them to embrace something like Leo, which can be a fairly big shock to the system, because you're shifting the way you do business. You're no longer relying on that. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this kind of dynamic? You're offloading all that to Leo. And that takes a real commitment across the whole portfolio. We typically don't, in fact, we never deploy just at a property. Usually it's the entire portfolio. Sometimes we'll launch regionally with the intention to go everywhere. But that kind of dynamic, the slow to change, resistant to change, not always the most technically savvy demographic, really requires us to be involved to help them along, or otherwise we'll have people that are not successful with the software, and we'll have churn. As it stands, we have about a 5% churn rate. So we have a very, I think, low churn as a result of that commitment on the account management side. The downside is we spend a lot on account management. So, it hurts our gross margin a little bit, because the support of the existing clientele is more than what you would see in a lot of existing SaaS companies. But I wouldn't trade better margins for, more dissatisfied clients or higher churn, or even not helping the clients in the way that we do. So yeah, I think that's unique. That's a unique thing about us.
Absolutely. And obviously I think there's inherent value in having, someone in direct contact with the client on a regular basis. You can pivot so much quicker than a lot of other companies that may take a little bit more time to respond. And not only that, you become a consultant to the client as well. Like you had mentioned earlier, if best practices
Right.
in this environment are, this, and you can advise your client saying, look, we've seen other clients of ours who have done this at a high level for many years. This is the things that they're doing. Now you're not only just the software company, you're also an advisor. And that probably contributes to the lack of churn that you've experienced over the last, however many years you've been in business. So
I just want to pony off that a little bit. It's like your software is actually on the other backside of the page, in my opinion, is kind of doing like a market research for all these other property managers out there. It's wondering across like the nation, the world, like what is everyone else doing for this problem? And so you're actually being able to do that is great. I mean, in my opinion, that's a marketing strategy that you could use with your software. It's like, look, we're basically compiling all this research within our company that, you guys can gravitate to and utilize to make your company even better. So that's awesome. I love it.
Definitely. And one thing I'm kind of curious about, and this is more so related to the future of, your company. What are some of the I guess the trends that you guys are following and trying to just use as a metric to, either add more functionality to the software, or, other things related to where you see the future of the company going?
Well, I think so we just we're all in attendance at OPTEC, which is NMHC's annual conference that's really more operations and technology focused, thus OPTEC. And without question, the number one subject du jour is centralization in this business. So a bit of the detritus that's come from the end of the pandemic is the Great Resignation, which I think has probably impacted the multifamily industry harder than other industries. And the reason being, as we sort of joking earlier, saying, it is an industry where people are famously underpaid and overworked. And not only that, it is a psychologically demanding profession, because you are, if you are the best property manager who ever lived and you do everything right, somebody is yelling at you today. Because to be a good property manager means you have to evict people when they don't pay their rent. And sometimes people come to you, they've gotten a divorce, or they lost their job, and your job is to say, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do for you. You have to pay your rent, or you need to move out. Or they brought in a giant pit bull and it violates their breed restrictions. And they say, I'm sorry, you can't have that dog here. Or there's somebody across the way who's being really loud and noisy, and people come in and they pound on your table saying, you got to get rid of, evict that guy immediately. He's a jerk. And you can't do that. Like, I'm sorry, I can send him a note and I can send him a letter, and then we have an escalation process. And that is not acceptable, especially in today's Karen environment. So, yeah. And when I was running a property management company, I had managers who were certainly insulted, assaulted on a number of occasions by upset people, sexually assaulted, harassed, and all of that is a formula for, if there was a better opportunity for those folks to work somewhere else, they will take it. Okay. And so that's what we're seeing now that there are work from home options available that pay the same, sometimes better. The multifamily industry is having trouble attracting service managers, property managers in the industry. People left in droves, hard to find people. And so the idea of centralization, which had been sort of roiling back in the minds of companies for, I think, a long time, has now come to the fore. And that is, can we do more with less? Can we create a hub of service managers who are then only deployed out to the property when they need that? Can we create a hub of leasing agents who no longer go on site, but they or only rarely go on site, and let people do virtual self tours? So that's where the industry, that's what the industry is grappling with right now, where they're moving towards. Leo plays a role there in that, I would argue that when you think of centralization of operations, you must have a tool like Leo that is monitoring what's happening on site, so that remote folks who can't get there anymore, who aren't on site to see these things in person, can still get the data they need, keep their thumb on the pulse of what's actually happening at the property, and be more efficient. So I think what Leo does plays nicely into that story and this trend that we're seeing in centralization. But we are seeing a massive sea change in the way multifamily properties are operated. It's not yet probably impacted very many people, but the processes and the technology that's being put in place now, in 24 months, I would say, is going to be broadly deployed, and you're going to have people that live in apartment buildings where maybe they never see anybody anymore, unless they specifically have a problem.
That makes sense. And then I guess in the lane that you guys are staying in is the operational side. Have you guys thought about the broadcasting of listings, like live listings for apartments, and integrating with different software systems or different websites or anything like that? Or is that completely unrelated to what you guys would look to do?
I think there are very nicely well done solutions for a lot of those things already, and I'm reticent to try to compete with
Makes
that.
Sense. Yeah, of course.
What we like to say is that we're the other must-have operating system. So you have your PMS systems, and then you have your operation maintenance system that stands alongside of it. And I think we kind of want to stay in that lane. For a long time, I didn't want to do work orders. I'm like, they get work. Our clients get work orders for free through their PMS systems. Like, why do we need to have work orders? We created a work order functionality not to compete with the PMS systems, but to allow that data to flow into Leo so they could stay in Leo on the operational side, right? So there was some overlap there. There's some overlap on inspections, but again, our inspections are really tailored towards managing behavior. So through inspections in Leo, if you find something, you can launch another workflow out of Leo, or send an email out that somebody needs to know something, or launch a brand new inspection. So there's all kinds of triggers that happen within Leo that just, it indicates a different kind of thinking about what inspections can do than what the PMS platforms are concerned about. And so even though there's some overlap there, I really feel like that's really a Leo feature. So we're going to stay in that lane. There are some things that we can do more to sort of gather together site level operational tasks into Leo that we're not doing. I think vendors are a great example. So a lot of the things that Leo's pushing out, like we say, hey, it's time to do your boiler inspection. That inspection is likely not being done by a local service manager. It needs to be, you need to bring a vendor in to do that work. What kind of role can Leo play in sourcing the vendor, managing the vendor, capturing, allowing the vendor to work in Leo so that we can capture the photos and the notes and the work and the readings that they take, have that all captured in Leo, and issue POs through Leo. Do you even want to perhaps do purchasing through Leo? So there's that kind of component that's, I think, on the horizon for us. An asset tracking module we've been talking about for a while. We built the beginnings of that. We're going to expand on that so that every piece of equipment. This, by the way, is something done very well on the commercial side already, but has not really been at the forefront of multifamily operators. But we're getting there now. So we need to accommodate that so that when we trigger somebody to go and do a move out inspection at a unit, we can tell them in advance, hey, by the way, the stove in this unit is still under warranty. So if you find a problem, don't create a work order through Leo. We're going to create a claim against the warranty, and we can just step you through that process. So broadly, those are a couple of things that we'll bring into the Leo environment. I think the future for us also is expanding into other very tangential markets where we offer the same kind of value, senior housing, assisted living. There's tons of processes in assisted living that could be very easily managed through Leo. We do have a commercial portfolio that's managed through Leo. Optimizing that and maybe doing more on the commercial side would also be probably the next step for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is great. I just want to say thank you, Daniel. I know as we start to round out the end of the interview here, the podcast, I know Raphael and I are both avid readers, and I know a lot of our listeners are as well. And I wanted to say that and ask, what is one of the most impactful books that you've ever read or even listened to? And it can be, 20 years ago, or it could be you read last night. So anything that's life-changing or altering?
I like all of Lencioni's work. I think the 5 dysfunctions of a team is I think that's a must read for somebody who's operating a startup company. The opportunities to create the great culture based on the sort of the understandings that you get through Lencioni's work is good. Excuse me. We run the whole business off of EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, which is based on Traction, Gino Wickman's book, and I cannot endorse that enough. The EOS system for us provides structure to the business, gets everybody rowing in the same direction, and it allows every member of the organization to understand how they are contributing to the greater goals, to feel successful in their efforts to accomplish those goals, and then to be rewarded, both emotionally, because it feels great to do something good, but also as a way to measure through KPIs, who's effective in the organization, who's really outstanding. So those books, I think, are transformative for me. I think philosophically, I think the Daily Stoic is really important for entrepreneurs, because this is a very difficult career path, professional path. I know oftentimes it gets glamorized, but I've been in CEO peer groups. Vistages. I'm now in a Vistage group, which is a sort of a mature CEO peer group. But I've been a baby Vistage, where guys were all starting their own companies, and you would get together as peers and talk about problems and issues that you're tracking. And in that little baby group, baby CEO group, which at any one time had probably targeted between 15 and 18 members, over the 4 years I was in that group, I saw a number of divorces, a number of bankruptcies that were driven by failures in in the entrepreneurial process, as trying to start a company with a great idea, oftentimes that just timing wasn't right, or couldn't get funded, or made some critical mistakes, and you crater. And sometimes it's to no fault of your own. Sometimes it's directly your own fault. But if you're going to endure that, because bad things will happen, even for us, although arguably we're very successful now, bad things happen. And the Daily Stoic allows you to divorce yourself from the emotion that you want to feel about the bad thing that happened and how you address it. And so I love that book.
I couldn't agree more. And like you said, any entrepreneurial endeavor is going to take a lot out of you, especially in the beginning. And it may be not the right one for you. I'm sure, in your life, you've had more than one business. And I mean, in my case, I had a small catering company that was not very successful in college. And now I'm in the brokerage, and who knows what the future holds. And it's one of those things where, it's an iterative process. And as you mentioned, 10-year overnight success. It just takes time and dedication. But I'm interested to read some of the books that you read. Obviously, Traction, phenomenal book. Highly recommend that as well.
Yeah. Top of the list.
Absolutely. So one of the last questions we like to ask our guests is we have something called the Commercial Real Estate Treasure Chest. It's a repository of resources that we make available to our audience. And typically guests contribute something along the lines of like a helpful PDF, Excel sheet, ebook, really anything that they think would be of value to the audience. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to share what you're willing to contribute today.
That's interesting, right? Because I wrote a book. What has been requested a couple times, which I have generated, is the first chapter of the book. Maybe not the first, maybe it's the second chapter of the book. Is about how to read financial statements. Like how do you interpret within the context of a multifamily operator? How do you interpret the P&L and the balance sheet and a cash flow statement? So we can make that part of your library if you want.
That'd be awesome. That'd be huge. Oh my. Yeah. That'd be very helpful.
It's a great tool. Yeah. They would definitely, everyone will definitely appreciate that. So thank you, Daniel, for that.
Yeah, sure. I'll have to format it a little bit. Give me a little bit to format it for you, but I'd be happy to do that. Great. Awesome. That's a great idea.
Great job. Yeah. Great job.
Not my idea. Having the library is a great idea.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, great job, Daniel. Yeah, that was good.
Good job, Daniel.
No, I mean, and we've had several people reach out to us, and they were just like, this is a gold mine. And it's more so just to compile the expertise of all the people we interview, because you all have so much value to provide in a variety of different ways. And if we can just get a piece from every single person we've interviewed, and I think we're almost at 100 episodes at this point. So imagine 100 individuals that are operating at an extremely high level that contribute something to a repository. It's going to be extremely valuable to people. So that was the impetus of it.
So I enjoyed listening to your journey of entrepreneurship and how it led you to Leo and how you've grown that. I know other people are going to want to know more about it, and maybe even contact you and get to know you a little bit better. And what avenue would you like them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. The website's Leonardo247.com, Leonardo247.com. And there's a contact us page there that anybody that puts me in their little dialogue box and says, I want to reach out to Daniel, that goes right to me. So great.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, and
also, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Also, we do a podcast of our own called the Apartment Academy, and so apartmentacademy.com. If anybody wants to be a guest on the Apartment Academy and talk about their experience with multifamily, that's apartmentacademy.com. You can also reach me through there as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll go ahead and include that link in the show notes. So if you guys haven't already, go check out his podcast, subscribe as well. And, if you guys have a guest that you'd like to recommend, or you yourself have a lot of experience in the multifamily space, highly encourage you to reach out and hopefully be a guest on the show. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. So again, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it. For those of you guys who are listening to this in a podcast format, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review. It really makes a huge impact in our ability to reach a broader audience. Along with that, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.